So I'll start a little differently than I did last time. I kind of forgot a couple things in the last session. I forgot to give my contact information. So at the last slide, I'll give it to you. But jeffcable.com, which is there, is my website. And for those of you who have not seen my blog, how many people here have been on my blog? Okay. If you haven't seen it, so I try to blog at least once a week. When I was at the Olympics, I blogged probably twice a day, or tried to. What it was like to be behind the scenes of the Olympics. So I try to blog, and I keep it very mainstream. I don't blog. I try not to blog about ultra high-end pro stuff. Right now, I just wrote my first take on this new lens, but usually it's just about stuff that I'm doing, or just shooting around as I'm traveling. It's interesting because when people go to a foreign city, a lot of times they go buy a mug or a T-shirt. And my goal when I go somewhere is to come back with one image, at least one really cool image. And so because I'm also the director of marketing at Lexar, that means I travel a lot for Lexar. But it used to be, before I did photography, when I traveled, which I've been doing for 20 years, I'd get somewhere, I'd have my meetings, and then in the evening I'd go back to the hotel or have dinner and go back to just crash and watch TV or whatever. Then I started getting into photography. And one of the reasons I have so much night photography is because that was my time when I was done with my meetings. Like now, as soon as I'm done, like even tonight, I'll be out, I got my tripod, I always carry one, and I'll go out and I'll do night shooting. Woo! I'll just put it back here. Where's Lauren? Facilities. But I mean, I love doing night photography. It's something that I started because that was my free time, but it's become something that is kind of a passion of mine. And I do, when I travel to different cities, my goal is to get at least one night that's to myself without meetings or dinners or anything else while I go out and shoot. And I've had plenty of times where I've gone out and had dinner meetings and then shot at midnight or 1 in the morning because I really want to get shots, which is really dangerous if you're in South America. Tried that, not a good idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a tour of some of the shots I've done, and we're going to talk about shooting. And it's not really just night, but it's just, kind of evening or when the sun goes down. One of the things I love is this. This is a sunset in San Francisco. I wanted to start with this photo. And the reason I wanted to start with this is I shot this with a Casio point and shoot. Before I was really into photography, actually. This was kind of early days for me. The reason I put this up here first is I think it's important for people to understand. For those of you who are my sports one that I did earlier today, we talk about Canon 1DXs and $12,000 lenses, and and you do need some of that to get stuff at the Olympics. But for night photography, honestly, knowing the right settings and the right things to do, you can get good shots with an inexpensive camera. And it's a little different, and I stress that, and you'll see this. What I did is I went through last night till 3 in the morning, and I put down the settings I had on every image so that you guys aren't going to say, how did you shoot that, or what exposure was it? And as I looked, I realized a lot of them were crop sensor, 30D, 40D in the old days, and not with my 5D Mark II or 5D Mark III. Some of them are, but I realized that, the 30D, I look at the 30D and I'm like, oh man, that thing's really old. But you know what? It worked great. Because if you're on a tripod, you could be at ISO 100, doesn't matter about noise, and you can get some really good shots. So this one here, point and shoot Casio, 6 megapixel. I couldn't even remember what camera it was. And in the metadata, it said EXP600. I have no idea what that is. So I had to Google it and find out what camera it was, because I had no idea, because it was so long ago. So the sun, that big ball that sometimes is in the sky, although not very much here, or not much in London either for the Summer Olympics. But I shot this in Hawaii, 100 to 400. This is at 400 millimeters with a 5D Mark II, I believe. And it was a fun shot in Hawaii because Hawaii is so beautiful. But the reason I put this in there is this is the time when people leave. So the sun goes down, bloop, it's gone, and you see everybody go, and they're gone. This is when I show up. Honestly, I don't even care if I miss a sunset. Many times I'll purposely miss a sunset, or I'll get into position to shoot, but I'm waiting for about 15 or 20 minutes after sunset. One thing I did not put in the presentation that I should have is, if you have an iPhone or a smartphone, there's an app on the iPhone called Sunrise. It's free. Get it. It's really great. I put my phone away. But basically, you just run that, and it'll tell you sunset, sunrise, sunset, and it'll even tell you like when the light is completely gone. So it'll be like sunset might be at 6:45, and I'll just say like, dusk ends at 7:10 or whatever it is. So it's a great app. Like I said, it's free. I use it everywhere I go. So when I fly to Australia, whatever, first thing I do is go look, okay, 6:22, that's when I want to be there. So when the sun goes down is where the fun begins. Why do I do night shots? Well, I guess like I said, one of the reasons is because it's when I have time. When I went to Europe for the Olympics, as I mentioned earlier, my wife went with me, and we went to Paris for 4 days first. That was her time. And she said to me, I really don't want this to be about photography, because she knows my passion is like have to shoot. So I told her, all right, here's the deal. It's not about photography, except 15 minutes before sunset to 1 hour after sunset, I want my time. The rest of the day is for you. And that's what we did. And the first night, we actually were so tired when we got there, we went to sleep at 8. And the blue light was till like 10:30. And then we got a phone call. We had a problem at our home in California. They called our hotel room, woke us up. And my wife, we answered the phone, took care of the problem. My wife went back to bed. I'm like, oh, let's see, 10 o'clock, I'm up and perfect. So I got my tripod and I went out for another 2 hours and shot. So somewhere in his sleep deprivation, we'll talk about that. But I love doing night photography because it's harder. And very few people will do it right. And I see a lot of stuff on Flickr. People send me, what do you think of this one? Or I see it on someone's Facebook page and all their friends are going, oh, it's awesome. And I go, oh no, it's not awesome. I don't write that back, I promise you. But I'm like, oh, I wish they'd done this way. And it's different because most people don't stick around and they leave. So the stuff that I'm capturing is different. And it's more striking. I found this in London. You go and you look at Big Ben and all that, and it's cool, the Parliament building. It's a beautiful place. Eiffel Tower, it's cool. But you know what? It's way cooler at night when it's lit. It's much more dramatic, I think. So that's why I like it. It's easier to control the light. We talk about sunlight. If you have a cloudy day, okay, it might be better for portraits, flowers, stuff like that. If you have a really bright sunny day, bad for sports. Well, at night, you have a little bit more control over that. So it's easier in some respects. And it's something fun to do at night. So I was going to come up with a bunch of things to say there, but we'll just leave this. Photography is very fun to do. We'll leave it at that. Okay, so this is one of the first shots I did, a night shot where I was playing around with white balance and pushed it really hard to the cool side, so it's very blue. I shot this obviously in Sydney. I've been there, I think, 10 or 12 times for business, and this is when I was first getting really into it. And this is one of those shots where when you do it, and you get this kind of shot, you're like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. And this is kind of what started me with a passion, like, wow, this is a great time to shoot.
Well, how long was the shutter release?
4 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
4 seconds at f4.5.
I didn't see it.
Typically, I'll shoot around ISO 100. Sometimes I'll vary, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I like ISO 100 because you get less noise, you get longer exposures. What do we got back here?
So what does crop mean?
Oh, what does crop mean? Thank you for asking that up front. Did you need me for something too? We're good? Okay. So crop is this. If you, with older cameras or some of the less expensive cameras today, they use what's called a crop sensor. In other words, the sensor is not a full-size sensor. So if you buy a Canon like 60D or a T4i or a Nikon D7000 or whatever, the smaller sensors, it crops. So a 200 millimeter lens really becomes like a 250. Or those types of things, or a 300. So this was shot on an older camera, where a 35 millimeter lens really gives me something effectively closer to about a 55 millimeter. So I put down crop wherever I used one of the older cameras, so you at least know that it's not actually 35, it's really closer to probably 50, in that range.
Would you do that for, are you going to do that for like any non-full frame?
Yeah, every picture that's in here that's not full frame will say crop, so we'll know. This is another shot. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to go to different positions to shoot. So this one here, I was trying to frame to get the Opera House far left, but highlight the bridge. Now, the challenge when you're shooting night shots is getting the light correct. And the vibrancy of the light, of what they're lighting, and versus the sky. So if you notice, the sky here is very black, it's very dark. And that's because I lost the sun versus the shot before where we have very blue skies. Here's the thing, your eye will not see this. I mean, sometimes you do, but typically you don't. You'll see this as black. This is probably 20 minutes after sunset. You take your first shot, look at your camera, and you'll see a deep blue. It'll blow your mind. That's when I love shooting. So what I'll do is I don't want to touch the camera, and we're going to talk about that. You want to keep everything very still. Number one thing is tripod. And I will tell you that when I first started shooting, do you guys know who Moose Peterson is? Good photographer, Moose Peterson. Yes. Moose is a good friend of mine, and I went and shot with him when I first started shooting. And I had this really horrible tripod. I mean, you could barely call it a tripod. It was one of these consumer ones you buy for like 49 bucks. And I had a 5D with a 7200 lens that Canon let me borrow. So Moose, being the good friend that Moose is, says to me, "What's that?" I go, "It's a tripod." He goes, "No, it's not." And he was right. The thing was horrible. And so I see people all the time, and they break out their little, no name, I better not say brand name, cheapy tripod, and their camera's wobbling everywhere, and they're holding the button down. Well, if you ever zoom in on a camera, and even on a tripod, and you put your finger on the button, you can see a little bit of movement on the camera. Movement is the enemy. So you want to keep very still. We're going to talk about how I shoot these in a minute, but you want to keep it very, very still. Hold on, we're going to try to do not too many questions, and we'll roll it in. This shot here, again, Sydney, this your human eye does not see. What you see is sparkling in the water. But if you shoot at a long enough shutter speed, the camera averages that out and you get really, really cool reflections. So again, you won't see those. And then once you start doing night photography, you'll get to the point where you'll see it and go, "Oh, that'll look good on camera." Especially when you have buildings that are lit with reds and blues, and you'll see that in some of the photos. Now this was shot at night on trip number 6, I think. On trip number 7, I shot it again. If you look at these screens, you'll see it a little bit better. There's a deep blue in the sky. It's a totally different look to it. It's much more interesting to have the deep blue than the pure black, I think. They're both okay, but I love the deep blue. It helps separate. Again, in Sydney, and looking at things differently, most people will shoot these shots because that's kind of the place to be. And you'll see everybody at what's called the Rocks in Sydney shooting this. So I went and actually walked over to the Opera House and started shooting. Now, granted, I didn't have the blue sky here because it was later, but I love the staircase the way it was lit. Now, I will tell you, I did clone out. There was a garbage can or something right here that looked really ugly, and I did get rid of it. But I love the way the lines of the lights took my eye and moved it from the lower part of the frame to the upper part of the frame. And you don't have to show the entire Opera House. This is just one segment of it. But we still know where it is, and it still tells a story. This is one, this is San Francisco Bay Area. I live there, and it's funny because I live there and I never get to like do any night shots. Mine are all over the world but San Francisco sometimes. It's kind of weird. But I was shooting a bat mitzvah, it was a bar mitzvah, over in the Oakland Hills area. And I had time in between the service and the party. So you'd think that I'd be shot out after shooting all day doing this bummers, but no, it's in my blood. I love what I do. So I went out and it was perfect because during Christmas they actually light up some of the buildings. So I went and I shot this. I did process it quite a bit in Photoshop. I pulled the contrast and did some stuff to get a little bit more oomph into the image. But it was cool. I mean, it was nice the way the sky lit up like that. That's always a bonus when you kind of get that.
How high up were you standing?
I was on a mountain. Yeah, so there's actually a mountain there off the side. And you know what I did? I didn't even know where to go. I had time to kill, and I just got in my car and I just drove and drove and drove and then found this spot. Pulled over, and of course it was really cold because it was night, and I forgot to bring a jacket. So literally, I'm like dying. I'm shivering. So I'm getting in my car, hit the button, and go in the car, and like it was cold, but it was fun. So you deal with it. But yeah, you just kind of find a location where you get a good clear view.
Where was your focus?
Here's the thing. When you're shooting shots like this, I typically will focus midway through the image, but when you're shooting everything so far from you, it becomes less of an issue. So I can shoot this at f8. I probably could have done the same shot at f2.8 or f4, and everything would still be pretty much in focus because everything's so far away. But I'm doing f8 for a couple of reasons. I want to get more in focus, but I also want a longer exposure, and we're going to talk about that in a second, and what that does like to the water there, which kind of just smooths out. When I come here quite a bit, right? And like I said, when I get done here, like tonight, I'll go out shooting. And so this was a time where I've shot, I usually stay in the Times Square area. And I got to the point where I've kind of shot that out. I couldn't think of anything new to do. So I challenged myself one time. I went only with a fisheye lens and just shot Times Square with a fisheye. And I kind of like the shot. It's kind of fun, different. It's very New York, isn't it? This one here is one of my favorite images, and partially because of the story. You asked the question about where did I shoot from and how high. I was teaching photography. We were teaching in England, and we started in Scotland, and we drove for 2 weeks all the way through England. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And we ended up in this place called Bristol, England. And I said, is there anything good to shoot here? I said, do you guys have anything cool? And the one woman said, well, we have our suspension bridge. I'm like, what's that? Oh, it's a bridge that goes over, over a canyon, basically, with nothing underneath it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I saw a picture somewhere. By the way, good tip, when you go to a foreign city, look at postcards and see what other people are getting. It's always a good hint. So I'll look. I saw some postcard shots of it during the day, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So that was my goal. So I finished, and my buddy goes, let's go to dinner. I go, you go to dinner. I'm going shooting. So I got my tripod, my camera. This is shot with a 30D. And I got in a cab, and I said, take me to the suspension bridge. So he drove me over there. And we're looking for a good place to shoot. And I swear there was nowhere good to shoot. Everything had obstructions. So I'm like, crumbs. So we're driving around, and I said, okay, forget it. I guess let's go back. So he's driving. We're on the freeway. And I see this. And I go, pull over. He goes, we're on the freeway, sir. And I'm like, pull over. He pulls over because it was night. There weren't that many people out there. I throw him like 20 bucks, whatever it was. I jump out on the side of the freeway, and there's a sidewalk area thing. And so I sat there on the sidewalk for 3.5 hours because I didn't realize how slow the sun was going down in England at the time. So that was at 7. I think I shot this at like 10:30. So luckily I had my headphones. So I just put my headphones on, had my iPod, and I listened to music for a couple hours and just waited for the sun to drop. But the image, I really love the image. I did darken in here a bit. But the sky just kind of opened up, the clouds kind of had a little bit of a curve, and it's just really, really cool. And that's kind of my reward for investing 4 hours sitting on the side of a freeway. And the funny thing is, so I shot this, and about a year later, the city of Bristol called me, or actually emailed me, and said they wanted it for their website, for their university or something. And so I was actually able to sell it to them. But it's not why I did it. Honestly, I did it because I wanted it for me, because that's what I go back with. That's my trophy. Yeah.
I noticed all your street lamps look so pretty. When I do night photography, I get a lot of those streaks.
Well, if you're getting streaks from street lights, that means you're probably like f11 or f16. The lower your aperture, higher the number, like f11, f16, you get more starburst kind of things from the lights, which I like. One of the things I do, and I have that in a slide, is I find that all the DSLRs, or at least all the Canon ones, overcompensate for the darkness. And what I find is my images get too bright. Like this stuff is like, it's like almost nuclear. So when I shoot night shots, almost always I stop down one full stop or close to a full stop. So if you don't know how to do exposure compensation, learn, just roll it down to -1, start there. Yeah.
For an f5.6 shot, it looks like they have very good depth of field.
Yeah, because everything's far away again. When everything's far away like this, this is at 35 millimeters. This stuff's pretty far away. It'll be fine.
What did you focus on? What point did you
I'm sure I focused on the bridge. Yep.
Yeah, when you say you can brighten it later, doesn't that just create more noise?
It can. Good question. If you brighten later, if you brighten a dark area, it will create noise. The good thing is I'm at ISO 100. So it's not too bad. And if there is noise, I will get rid of the noise. Like if there's noise in the sky, I'll get rid of the noise either by pulling the luminance slider in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, whatever you're using, or you can use software like Nik Define or some of the softwares that get rid of noise. Noise to me is less of an issue than getting the exposure correct. Okay? Let me take 2 more questions and we'll keep going. Yeah.
Does the shot an aperture priority?
Yeah, I shoot almost everything. These are almost all aperture priority. But I'm watching the shutter speed to see where I am. Yeah.
Are you using a physical cable release? Or you do
Yeah, I use a physical. I use a cable release, and sometimes I get really lazy and I don't bring it, and I just go into timer mode. But a lot of times I'll use 10-second timer mode, even though the camera has 2. And believe it or not, I know this sounds bizarre, but the motion of my finger on a camera is shaking the camera. But even sometimes when I hit it, I want the camera to settle itself for 10 seconds before it shoots. And a lot of times, and I got a slide on this, I actually lock the mirror. We'll talk about it in a minute, and I'll show you. The challenge with shooting these is you have a short window of time. It's not like daytime where you've got 10, 12, 15 hours to shoot. especially if you want that blue light, you have about 15 minutes. There's a shot you'll see in here that I just shot recently in China. I was with my translator and another coworker, and I ran. They're looking at me like I'm insane. But I shot where I want to shoot, and then I'm running through all these Chinese people trying to get to the next spot, and they're like, he's an idiot. But I knew that my blue light was going to go away. I'll show you the shot. It was worth it. You got to carry more equipment. I carry a tripod everywhere I go. I've got the Gitzo that kind of folds down. It fits in my carry-on bag as long as I take the head off, and that goes with me everywhere. I almost never travel without a tripod unless I know I'm going somewhere and I have zero free time. That tripod goes with me. And I carry one in each car for that same reason. So you gotta have a good tripod. And cable release helps, they're cheap. Get a cable release, which hooks to your camera, so you're triggering it without having to touch camera. Weather can be a challenge, although I'm gonna show you some images that were taken in really ugly weather, but still look good at night, which is cool. But weather's, as I mentioned about being cold, make sure you dress appropriately, because I have frozen my butt off so many times doing this. Especially San Francisco summer, Patience. I'm so type A, or as my wife could tell you, ADHD. You start naming all the acronyms, I'm that. But patience is not something I'm really good at. But when it comes to photography and night photography, I tend to become patient. And the reason is I know what's coming. I know that it's worth the wait. But I drive people crazy. So when you shoot at night, don't take friends who don't shoot. Because they'll look at you like, really? Like, come on, we've been here for 45 minutes. But it's still getting nice, it's still nice. You should see we had my wife and another friend in London, and I'll show you some of the shots we did. And they're looking at me like, really? You've been shooting the same bridge for half an hour. Or kids do this. Dad, let's go. So what you do is you just give every one of your kids a tripod and a DSLR, and you're good.
How much do you move about when you're shooting for a half an hour of the same bridge?
Good question. How much do I move when I'm shooting the same bridge? If I've got a killer composition, but the sky's not performing yet, it's not dark enough where I'll stay. If I feel like I've got the shot in the can, I got it, then I'll move. Once I feel like I have it, I'll start moving because I have that short window of time. Now, if it's already pitch black, it ain't gonna get blacker or lighter, then I'll take my time and I'll move around without running. Sleep deprivation, I mentioned this. It is a challenge because I've been in many occasions where it's just so cool that I'm not willing to leave, and I just stay and keep shooting. And it makes it tough sometimes for morning meetings. So this is a shot in Las Vegas. This is a Bellagio, well-known, and I'll tell you what, I've seen this many times because we go to Vegas at least 2 or 3 times a year for meetings or trade shows. And it's cool during the day, but it's not that cool.
No, it isn't.
Night is just a completely different thing. And they're kind of weird there about tripods. Sometimes they want to kick you out and sometimes they don't care. I don't fully understand that. I didn't put that in the slide deck, but we should talk about that for a second. You need a tripod for the most part, unless you find a really good wall that happens to be at the right height and everything else. You need a tripod. A lot of places don't allow tripods, and I've yet to figure out good reasoning. Like for instance, I can take a monopod into a train station here, and they're okay. And I can rest it on a wall and they're okay, but the minute I bring a tripod in, they want you out of there. Now they say Homeland Security or all this, I don't buy it. I was telling the group before, I went to, where was I? Where was I? No, not MoMA, the Met. And they wanted to kick me out of there. And I'm like, well, why? I mean, I'm in the central area of the plaza. Who cares if I'm on a tripod? It's at night. No one's gonna bump into it. I'm standing, and they would not let me do it. And I ended up doing it. And I just, told the guy, go get your sergeant, give me 5 minutes. And I shot it. But I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. But, rules are rules. Now, inside public places like church and stuff, I can understand that. They don't want you tripping on them. We went to Australia, and there were these amazing caves in the Blue Mountains of Australia. And we drove like 2.5 hours, spent the night there, got there the next day, and they said, oh, you can't use tripods in the cave. And I'm like, you can't shoot handheld. So they said, well, no, you can't do it unless you buy the cave out. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. Did you say rent the cave out? And I said, how much is that? Well, this is the funny thing. The tours were $65 a person. And there were 2 of us, me and my buddy. I go, how much does it rent the cave? 130, 150, or whatever. It was like the same price. I said, done. So So I rented the whole damn cave. And here's the best part. They said, well, we have to see if we have a ranger that can go with you. Well, we found this really nice girl. Well, we had so much fun with her. We were joking. So she goes, tell you what, after this cave, let's go do the other one. So we ended up getting like 2 caves to ourselves. And the best part was, I'd say to her, all right, can you turn those lights off, those lights on? It was unbelievable. So never take no for an answer, just be creative. But it was awesome. It was one of the coolest things. So anyway, so the one great thing about motion, or doing a slower shutter, even at 1/7, is you get a little bit of that flowing motion in the water, which is a very cool thing. This was shot in DC, horrible weather, completely overcast, but it works. Daytime stuff, ugh. Nighttime worked.
Why did you go to ISO 400 in the previous time?
Why did I? I have no idea. I think I might have just been there. I don't know. I have no good answer for that. I thought about that when I was putting this in last night. I'm like, what the heck? I was doing a 400. I don't know.
And the other question about ISO, is that below the native ISO for the camera? Like my
No.
goes 200 to 64.
Yeah. So what my camera has the ability to go below 100 to 50. I don't do it, and the reason is if they make it a special setting, and it's not default, there's probably a reason for that. And I don't know why this is, but Canon says that ISO 100 is clearer and better than ISO 50. Don't get it, I don't know why, but I'm trusting them on that. So I stay at 100. And generally that works fine.
200 for Nikon.
Yeah, 200 for Nikon's fine. I mean, honestly, these cameras, the newer cameras have gotten so good at ISO. You could shoot this at ISO 800 and you still be fine. Problem is, now you're introducing too much and you can't slow it down. You want to be at a lower ISO so you can create that longer exposure, which we're going to go through in a second. So this one here, this is a night shot, 3 seconds, because I wanted to get a little bit of movement of the fireworks. This is with the Beijing Olympics, and I did it, why did I do this at 3 seconds? Because I could. And I wanted to show the movement. Why did I not have deep blue skies? Because they didn't blow off the fireworks till midnight, and you get what you get. But I did shoot this one. I showed the last group. This is still one of my favorite shots, and I did have blue sky, partially because I had blue lights everywhere. The blue from here was actually going up. Same thing with these lights, and they had already blown off some fireworks. There's a little bit of smoke in the air. You can see that here, especially on these screens. That smoke is actually, some of the light is billowing through that. That worked to my advantage. This is the one in Vancouver. The other thing is you'll notice with a 5-second exposure, we're getting this, which again, the eye is not seeing that. You will not see, if you look on these screens, the banding, the rainbowing of colors there, that the human eye will not see that. But you get that at night. Here's the shot from the Met, my famous almost getting arrested shot. The other reason, so this one here, I pushed the ISO 200 at 6.3. I wanted a 1-second exposure because I still wanted to see people with a little bit of movement, but if I left it on for like 30 seconds, they'd be gone. Which, by the way, if you ever want to shoot a picture of something with no people in it, shoot it for a really long exposure because the average is 0. I do this with my kids all the time. We go out to somewhere at night and I have them do this. What is the average behind their arm at this point? There's an arm, but now there's no arm. It's just leaves or whatever behind them. Leaves, 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 leaves. Up, arm, leaves, leaves. Well, the average is what's behind them. So they end up with no arms. It's a really fun thing to do. My kids love it. So if you leave an exposure open long enough, so if you wanted to shoot the Met with no one in it, you could put a filter on to make it really dark, make this a 20-minute exposure with the police trying to get you out at the same time. But you could make this like a 20-minute exposure thing. There'd be no one there. Unless you have one person sitting at the fountain, smoking for 20 minutes. Maybe they'd be there.
Or sleeping.
Or sleeping. Yeah, you get to those people too. Which is always fun, by the way. I love it when you have that one person standing still. I got this in Paris by the Arc de Triomphe. And the person standing, I think they were taking a picture, and they're standing really still and everybody else is moving. Kind of cool. This one I shot in Boston on a recent trip. Flew in, didn't even go, like I was supposed to go to my hotel, like no way. Turned from the airport straight, because I knew I had this light. It was kind of overcast and misty. I love how the O is burnt out. I could have fixed that in Photoshop, but I like it, just the way it is. Just found this spot, shot it. This is with a 5D Mark II, 28 millimeters, 6 seconds. And actually, there were people walking on the street. I kind of waited for them to go by. I think there was actually someone walking during this frame, but they were walking quick and not even shown. So this is another one of those trips where the family's like, Dad, you're not going to shoot, are you? I'm like, no, we're going to Disneyland. Forget the camera, we're good. But I knew, but 3 years ago, we went to Disneyland, and I remembered this, and I'm like, God. And I took my point and shoot, or whatever I did, and I really liked it, and I thought, I got to get that shot. So this time, it was the same thing. We went to Disneyland for 3 days, and the last night, I told him, I'm going to bring my tripod, because we were staying cross street at the hotel. I went back, I got my tripod and my camera, and I shot just this image. That's all I wanted, and then we're good. But I really wanted this. The colors are just cool. Now, is it some amazing landscape of whatever? No, it's all man-made, but it's cool. It's colorful.
Why did you crank up the ISO to 640?
Yeah, the reason I did the ISO at 640, and you'll notice this is only a sixth of a second. The reason I did is the lowest aperture I could get, the lowest number, highest aperture, f4. Okay, so I wanted this to be fairly quick because I didn't want this to be averaged out into a blur. I wanted Mickey here and Mickey there. So that's why. So I pushed the ISO up to get a faster shutter speed at night to be able to freeze this a little bit more than I normally would.
Oh, Mickey's head spins.
Well, otherwise, it would spin, but it's not in the spinning. It's just that if I left this open for 5 seconds, because of the motion in the water, you wouldn't even know that's Mickey. It would just be a blurry Mickey, which comes to conditions. Well, obviously, it's whatever time is available. So could I shoot now? Probably not. Oh, maybe. But bad weather can be a problem, but it can be a good thing, especially if you get some good stormy clouds. You want to avoid distractions. Here's something that that's tough. You go to a really amazing place to shoot a photo, and it never fails. There's always some architect decided he put a spotlight coming right at where you want to shoot. So it's coming right in your lens, or there's a great street lamp, but it's right over you. So I always use my lens hood. I love people that do this. This is my pet peeve. My kids always laugh at me. So I always keep my hood on. I love traveling with people who do this. And they shoot this way. And they're during daylight. And I'm like, why would you do that? If you got a hood, turn around and use it. So my kids are, Dad, don't go tell them. Don't go tell them. I have to go. So I do use a hood. I try to keep as much ambient light off my lens as possible, unless I'm looking for flare, typically not. But there are times that we were shooting in, was it Korea? No, it was actually in China about 6 months ago, and there was this cool shot. I don't know if I put it in here. And I was with some video guys, and we were doing this shot. And there's this one spotlight coming right at us, like because we were over a fountain shooting. So literally, I had my buddy go over there. We had all of our jackets, and we tried to zip them all together. And we created this giant thing, and we threw it over this light because they were cooking, right? So he's holding it, trying not to have them burn, and he's blocking this light. So the whole fountain goes dark, and all the people are looking like we're insane to get this one shot. It was pretty funny. Here's the other thing I love. Perfect for polluted areas. Mexico City. You ever been there? Mm-hmm. Every time I go to Mexico City for meetings, I go home like this because the air is brutal. I get off the plane and my throat hurts. It's just really brutal, the air quality there. And so I actually was looking at day shots, and it was just, this cruddy, nasty sky. But I went and I got this picture, and I really like this shot. It kind of came out nice of the palace there, but it makes it look pretty nice. I always my big joke is night photography. You can even make Mexico City look good. It's not a bad place. It's just really polluted. So here's my shot from my last trip to China. This is in a little town. It's about, God, where were we? We're about an hour and a half from a town called Xi'an. Xi'an is where Micron, our parent company, makes our solid-state disk drives. And so I was lucky. I had a free day. And my coworker says, they're very hospitable in China. And she said, we will take you somewhere really nice to do photos. And I had seen this before because my old boss went there 2 years ago. And she goes, oh, you have to go there. And I'm looking at her photos that are kind of, and I'm like, I do need to go there. So, and I shot, and I like it. But if you look at the sky, it was nasty gray. Just not, it was polluted. China tends to get that way too. But this is that one I kind of ran for. At night, it's cool. Now, I'm not saying that this one's not cool. I mean, they're both good and interesting shots, but I love the lighting at night, and I love the reflections off the water. It's a totally different feel. It's not that one's better than the others. They're very, very different. And now, if you look at the blue sky, it doesn't look so bad, does it? You can't tell that it's grungy out there. And this is the other advantage, is you can actually, even on a day like today, which is kind of overcast outside, you can shoot at night and get some good shots with the deep blue sky. It still happens. Okay, so we're talking about settings. I try to stay at around ISO 100. You'll see out the image, sometimes I'm jumping between 2, 4. I rarely ever shoot anywhere higher than 800, unless I don't have a tripod and I'm forced to shoot at 1600 or 3200 or 10,000, whatever. I really try not to. Because if you want to get a good clean image, you want to keep your ISO low. I generally shoot in aperture priority, but I'm very cognizant of what my shutter speed is. So, yes, I might be in aperture priority and I might be at 6.3, but as I'm at 6.3, I'm looking, well, what does that give me for a shutter speed? I'm always looking at that. Could I slip over to shutter speed, shutter priority? I could, but I don't need to. Because essentially, I'm just rolling the aperture to get me whatever shutter speed I want. Okay? And because I can play with the aperture, it gives me the ability to determine my depth of field if that's an issue. Live view. On the Canon, they have live view, where I can take my camera. This is a trick I just started recently. But when you go to live view and you click on the button, and it now shows me through the back of the LCD, right? There's 2 reasons I really like that. Did you hear it happen? Listen to this. It's locking the mirror. Here's how sensitive I am to movement for my night photos. I don't even want the mirror flapping. So not only am I not touching my camera, not only am I standing like this with my jacket to create any wind from blowing, I have a camera strap that disconnects. And I take it off because I don't want it blowing and moving my camera. So I'm very anal about that. I want to make sure there's no movement.
Canon has the lockup, don't they?
It does, but most of the cameras have some form of a mirror lockup mode. Live view happens to be just a cheating, very easy way to do it. But you don't want motion, because if you get any motion at all, here's the other thing. Brooklyn Bridge. You want to shoot from the Brooklyn Bridge at night with a tripod? Good luck. It's a very movable bridge. I tried it. A little bit of shaking. On the bridge in London, where I shot some images, I had to make sure there were no buses coming by. Cars, there wasn't much movement, but one of those double-decker buses came by and you could just feel it in your feet. And that means that there's movement. Now, could I turn up the ISO a little bit, or could deal with a little bit of movement? Maybe, but I don't want it if I can avoid it. As you were talking about, I do use a cable release, and I've got a Canon one, I've got third-party ones. I carry probably like at least 1 or 2 in every bag. They're cheap. Looks like this.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Or real cable or electronic?
Real cable. It's cheap. Nah. You hit a button, it works. Now, there are some that have timers, like intervalometers, where you can have it go every 2 seconds or whatever. I don't need that. I just don't want to touch my camera. So I've got infrared ones. Plug it in, use it. That's what I do. And if I'm lazy and there's times where I don't want to carry this or hook it up, I'll just put it in 10-second timer mode. The only problem with 10-second timer mode is if I'm shooting and I'm trying to get the trails of the cars, I'm waiting for cars, and okay, here come a bunch of cars. I want to go. I don't want to wait 10 seconds and potentially miss it. So I'll use a cable release. And again, movement, bad.
You find that the wireless ones don't work as well?
No, they do. Wireless ones work, but then you have more batteries to deal with. Plug it in, go. I don't know if you've seen my previous presentations. I'm a lazy photographer. I really don't want to be charging stuff and taking tons of stuff. I want to do this with a minimal amount of gear and make it look good. And that's the thing about night photography, is you have a decent tripod and a reasonably good camera, and you don't touch it, you're going to be good. And I've seen plenty of people take decent pictures by just putting it on the right wall. And I can't believe how many times I've seen people do it wrong. 90% of people, their flash is on. This is my favorite thing. Oh yeah, this would be great. I'm up at the peak in Hong Kong. The peak, actually you'll see the picture of the entire skyline of Hong Kong. And the people up there with their flash, as if this little flash is about this big, is gonna light up the entire, people on the Kowloon side are like, ah! I mean, it does you no good, and all it's gonna do is light up the railing or whatever in front of it. So you want to turn that off. You want to get it onto somewhere, and, and we show up with all our gear, and people are like, oh, you're serious. I'm like, no, I just want to get it right. And you can do it with a cheaper tripod. You don't need the expensive ones.
Does the Gorilla Pod work?
A Gorilla Pod could work.
Depending if there's a fence.
Yeah, as long as you have something to hook it to. But the only problem is, again, every bit of movement is going to be a problem. So if you hook it up to something, you got to make sure it's really hooked on. I have something called the Magic Arm. Have you guys ever seen this? It's a Manfrotto clamp. I use it at the Olympics to remotely mount cameras. So if you go to the top of the rock, they don't allow tripods. But the nice thing is you actually have a lot of level places to put a camera. But you can bring a clamp. So a friend of mine took a Magic Arm, he just clamped it onto this thing and just extended it, and he's got a camera mounted. So there's some different things you can do. I don't go to that extreme generally, although if I really want a shot, I probably would.
What's the name of that?
It's called Manfrotto Magic Arm. Not very expensive. And then you get what's called a super clamp, not to be confused with Super Tramp, which was a music group. Super clamp, and you connect it to it, and you just clamp it to whatever you can. Even little kids, it's like, don't move. But that would work too. Turning off IS, this is an interesting thing. A lot of times if you're on a tripod and you want something to be really, really still, image stabilization is your enemy, not your friend. Because you're on a tripod and it's like, okay, I'll try to make this still for you. Oh, wait, I'm really still already. Maybe I need to move. Like it confuses it. Just turn off IS. Now, do I always remember to do that? No. But I try to remember to turn it off. Here's the other thing I'll tell you. When I travel, I've got the 24-105 Canon lens on here. There are times when I'm traveling and I don't have a whole lot of time. So I know I'm not going to shoot. I'm not going to bring 20 lenses or 5 lenses with me. I might just take 1 or 2. I've got a carry-around lens. It's an 18-250 or whatever it is. I've got a Sigma and Tamron, different ones. I'll take those with me sometimes. And a lot of these shots, most of these shots that you've seen so far, were taken with a consumer-grade lens. Because it doesn't matter. You're at ISO 100, you're perfectly still, they're going to give you a good image. So the good thing is you do not need $10,000 worth of gear to get a shot like this. You can have a consumer-grade camera with a consumer-grade tripod and get some really, really nice stuff.
What about distortion on the wider shots? Like the one with
You know what?
Las Vegas and everything?
I don't know. Do you see a lot of distortion in those shots?
No. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you don't see it. Honestly, it's and every lens has its sweet spot and all that. But you know what? Honestly, for night stuff, I've really seen no issues, even with consumer stuff.
Are you using zoom or multi-level lenses versus prime?
No, it's all zoom. I'm not a prime guy. That sounds weird, doesn't it? I'm not. I'm a zoom guy. I love zoom lenses. I want ability to reframe things, zoom in, zoom out, especially when you're doing like night shots. I mean, there's times I want to get really close to the bridge and then get a wide shot of the bridge. I like zooms. And
Manual?
manual, no, aperture priority.
No.
Oh, manual focus? Yeah, okay. When I go to live view, one of the cool things about, and this is going to be Canon here. How many people here are Canon shooters? Okay, for those guys that have this, and this is probably true for Nikon too, but basically when you go into live mode here, you can do this thing called magnification. So I go in really tight to the bridge, and you should see people's looks when you're at, like, in Paris, and you're zooming in on just one girder of the Eiffel Tower, and there's people behind me going, huh? Like, I'm at 400 millimeters plus a 10x, and I'm zooming in on the girder, and I'm manually zooming it because I want it to be tack sharp, and I leave it, and then I shoot. So I use that 10x zoom to my advantage in live view, which is another advantage of live view. All right, here's my equipment. Now don't let this scare you. I am lucky. I do shoot a lot, so I reinvested, as I say, a lot of it. But this is my list. Let me just tell you, here's what I typically take for night photography. 1 camera body. My carry-around lenses I don't have in here, but I've got these different ones like 28-300 Tamron, 18-200 Sigma. And if I'm lazy, actually I have it with me. Look, consumer grade 28-300 lens, Tamron lens. And this is a great lens just to carry around if I know I might want to zoom or I might go to wide and I don't want to carry a bunch of stuff. I'll take this.
Is that the one in Mark III?
Yeah, this one, the 28-300 does support full frame. Yep. But I have all this stuff. What I'm carrying with me today, 1 Mark III, 24-105, the carry-around lens, and my 51.4 in case I want to do some low light shots. That's it. And my tripod, and my low pro bag, and of course, a crap load of memory, because I can. One of the great things about being a Lexar is I carried, like at the Olympics, I think I had almost a terabyte of memory cards. It was ridiculous. I had so much stuff with me, but I was shooting a lot. you know, the interesting thing about the Olympics, as I was telling the previous group, I shot about 78,000 shots at the Olympics. Night shooting, I will come back for an entire night and I'll probably have less than 100 shots because they're all like 30-second, you know, or whatever, and you take your time to frame them. It's not like you're going, brrr, you know, totally different type of shooting. And in some respects, very rewarding because you're really investing the time to get the one shot.
When you go past 30 seconds, does your camera with another 30 seconds for noise reduction?
No, I don't. Oh, so I don't use any in-camera noise reduction. None. And the reason is because the amount of the time that your exposure is going is the amount of time it takes afterwards to do its exposure or its noise reduction. So if you have a 2-minute exposure, after it's done, you have to wait another 2 minutes. Okay, I'm way too impatient for that. And if I have very limited time with that blue light, I ain't wasting it on some camera doing its thing. I'll do it later. That's the way I work. All right. So my editing equipment, I'm a Mac guy. I love my Macs. I told the previous group the M4, the solid state disk drive, if you don't have an SSD and you like speed, get one. It replaces your hard drive with flash memory. This is, by the way, made by our parent company, Micron, which makes the Crucial products. But it is awesome. It speeds up your computer, speeds up Photoshop, and it's just incredible.
A 9 terabyte drive, or is it?
No. This is
terabyte
it's three terabytes. So I've got an SSD and three 3-terabyte drives behind it. I have a lot of images. I never delete. I have every image I've ever shot digitally since 1996, I think. I delete the bad ones, but I keep all the good ones. So that's kind of my system. I've got a lot of hard drives. I've probably got about, I don't know, 30 or 40 terabytes at my house. I can start my own server farm. Yeah.
How long have you been using the Drobo?
I've been using the Drobo now for about 1.5 years, 2 years. No problems. It's been great. I have it hooked up through a USB 3.0, third-party USB 3.0 card in my Mac, and it just flies. I love it. And the thing is, if you're going to shoot for money, you better back up. Or let me rephrase that. If you really like your images, you better back up. I'm doing all these night shots. None of these are for money. I mean, they're all for me. But if I lost them, you know, I invested a lot of time in these, I'd be really upset. So I back up like to at least 3 places. And I never format a memory card until it's backed up at least twice.
What drives do you use in the Drobo?
Western Digital Enterprise class drives, 2 terabyte drives, 5 of them. You know, at WD, I've never had a problem with the Western Digital drive, and I swear by them. They've been great. So that's all I use now. I've had hard drive issues. That's just ugly. I use the USB 3.0 readers. I was telling the previous group for the Olympics, that was my godsend because I was downloading 15 gig a minute. I was contractually obligated to get images to the team within 2 hours, and time was everything at the Olympics. Complete opposite of night photography where you're just relaxed in shooting. I do print. You know, it's funny. I never printed in the past. I had Epson say, "Hey, we'll give you a printer." I'm like, "Nah, I don't want a printer." And they finally gave me one, and I am like the most hooked person. Now I got like multiple larger printers, not huge, but like the R2000 is like a $500 printer. I love that thing. That is like my favorite thing in the world. I print all the time now. How many people here use a Wacom tablet? So those of you who use one know, like they're completely addictive. They're pressure sensitive. Editing is cut in half when I use my tablets. It's just awesome how good they are. If you don't, you know what? Try one.
Instead of a mouse?
I don't even use a mouse. Matter of fact, even when I do email, everything on my computer, it's all Wacom tablet. I don't even use a mouse. It's so good. But most of the time I'm on my computer, I'm editing. But the nice thing is, as opposed to a mouse, where you're having to change brush sizes all the time, well, with a Wacom tablet, the harder I press, the thicker it gets. And it's a very natural movement. It's awesome. All right, so software, Photomechanic, I talked about the previous one. All the sports photographers use it. It's a very high-speed browsing software. I have a screenshot I'll show you. And then I do everything inside of Photoshop. So here's Photomechanic. Oh, am I going back? It's just Photoshop and Photomechanic. Those are the two. And this is Photomechanic here. So this is what it looks like. This is a real screenshot of my shots in London, of the Parliament building in Big Ben, up on the bridge, or something off the bridge. And this is what I shot. And you'll see that I color code the ones I like. So that one had a good streaking. I think I have that shot coming up here. So I'm going through them and looking at them all in Photomechanic because I can go through an image I can just fly through them and find the one that I like. panoramas, I like doing panoramas, a little bit more work, but I love doing them. I don't do them very often because I just don't find myself in the right spots to do them all the time. But you get to a good wide vista and it's awesome. And I'll show you some here coming up. You want to typically overlap by 1/3. So what I'll do is I'm shooting this segment and I see Empire State Building's right here. I'll make sure the next shot includes the Empire State Building with a little bit of room to give. And then I'll, Chrysler Building, and then I'll make sure that that's in the next frame and keep going. The one thing you want to do when you're doing panoramas is you want to make sure that your horizon's about the same. You don't want to be taking this one here and this one here and this one here and this one here. Try to keep them even. And work quickly at night, because if you do have the blue sky, you want to get a relatively similar blue sky across the board. Yes, it'll be darker and lighter depending where the sun just set, but you want to do that. If you're black, if it's midnight, it won't matter. So just to show you a couple of panoramas, this is one I did in Hong Kong. This is from the peak. This is where people have their flashes out, make me laugh. That's actually a stitch of, I don't remember how many images that was. This is in Chicago, from the aquarium area. And you'll see we have blue sky on the one side going dark. So sun set over here, so I still have some sky going, and it's gone by here.
What difference was there between the shots?
Not very long. I shot them all within a couple seconds. I mean, probably whole thing was totally probably a minute or two. It's just that because the sun had set on that side, it was still brighter on that side.
Which way did you shoot from?
Which way did I go? I do not. Oh, I almost always go left to right, but it wouldn't matter. You can go right to left, left to right. Oh, here's the other thing I'll do. If I'm doing panoramas like this, and I go boom, 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 boom. Okay, now I'm gonna try it again, just to make sure I got it. I shoot a picture of my hand. Boom, 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 boom. Now I'm gonna do one more time. I'll go F6. Shoot a picture of my hand. Boom, boom. And that way it's like a separating point. So I know where my panoramas are starting and stopping. And I have a great picture of my hand. This one's one of my favorite ones. This is shot at Sydney again. I spent a lot of time in Sydney. The reason I really like this one, and I'll tell you a little story about this, but so I had a woman getting married, well, her wedding picture here. This is a very typical, they do a lot of wedding pictures here. I had this person taking a photo over here. This guy was with this girl and she dropped a bunch of bags of supermarket bags there, and I'm like, what? So I had to Photoshop those out. That made me mad. Don't mess with my shot. So I shot this at 5:26 p.m. I still remember this. Did the whole panel. Like I said, I've been to Sydney countless times. It was the one time that night they did not light up the bridge. Now, and I've been there, I've never seen it not lit up. Turned out they were testing something new and they turned them off. Now I'm freaking out because I had this great shot with the woman where they're getting their picture done and the whole thing, and no lights on the bridge. So what I do? I went back the next day. I know exactly where I was standing, and I looked at my images to make sure. I went back the next day at 5:26 p.m. and I reshot the bridge, and then digitally dropped it in. Every girder has been put in using the Wacom tablet. Every girder and every piece of blue on this image has been added. It took me, I don't know, probably, I think 7 hours. I mean, this is the rare case, but this actually, I have this. This is enlarged to about 40 feet long by 5 feet or whatever it is in Australia right now. So.
The photograph looks reversed.
No, that's real. That's right. That's taken from the rocks. The Park Hyatt, my favorite hotel in the world, is right there. I can't stay there anymore because it's too damned expensive, but it's a great place. All right.
How do you manage to pan horizontally without?
Very carefully. How do I pan horizontally and make sure, I just watch the horizon. I'm just really careful about it.
You don't use those special.
No, I don't use anything special, nothing. Just my eyes. And this is the thing, with photography, there's a lot of people who can tell you, oh, if you spend 20 grand to get the this and that. I mean, it's true, and you can do it. And they actually have machines that'll actually shoot panoramas for you.
A video tripod would just give you that.
Yeah, you could do that too. But you know what? You could just turn, lock it. I mean, honestly, it works. I got proof. When to use light and when to add light. So let's talk about that for a little bit. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. Okay. So you want to take advantage of what light is there. In the case of this one here, I didn't add anything. All those lights were there. Did I like these lights in my shot? Initially, not really, but okay, it still works. But sometimes you have to add light. So when I add light, I try to keep it limited. You don't want to make it look like you added light. So let's take a look at this one. Better on these screens. But this was shot in Hawaii. So we're in Maui with my family. And see, I told you it's a sickness. I got to shoot. So we're at the Marriott on Maui, and they had a luau. Now, we weren't part of the luau. But the weird thing is they didn't hide it. Like, they had a hedge. So you could watch the luau from behind the ledge. You didn't have to pay for it. You didn't get the food, but you could watch. So I'm standing way back with my 100 to 400 lens with 5D Mark II and zoomed all the way to 400. You can tell it's at 60th of a second, so I got pretty lucky to hold it pretty steady. I shot it as wide open as I could at 400 millimeters, which is 5.6. I pushed the ISO to 3200, but I relied on no flash and no light. I knew there was enough light coming off the flames that he held. If I added flash, which I easily could have done, it would have ruined that image because I wanted the light to be the dramatic light that he held. So I shot this and really liked it. It was one of those moments where like, wow, I got that one. So I put on my iPhone, I transferred over there, and I showed it to the guy at the Marriott. He goes, you gotta talk to Bill. I go, who's Bill? Bill's the guy that runs our luau. So I go talk to Bill. Bill goes, can you shoot our luau for us tomorrow? I go, yeah, probably. So I checked my family, and they go, yeah, that's fine. So I went and shot part of the luau. So the last night, we were guest of honor. We had the best table, all comped. And my kids were like, Dad, this photography thing rocks. So I shot some additional stuff, and that was pretty funny. But ambient light only, adding nothing. This one here, I shot in DC the same time I shot that at the one of the Jefferson Memorial. So, and the reason was I had one night in DC before I flew out again. So I didn't have a choice. The weather wasn't great. Oh well, what are you gonna do? Now the funny thing is, it's taking around midnight. I'm the only one out there, right? One thing, as a woman, be careful doing this because you want to be with other people. Or if you're in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, don't go alone. Take a bulletproof car, 2 bodyguards. Actually, I really do take a bulletproof car and 2 bodyguards when I go down there. But this shot here, what I did is I left it open for 30 seconds, and I just let the light, even though it was misty and a little bit lit behind them, I kind of like that. And especially because it's a memorial, it kind of adds a mood. So it worked for me. Which what? Which memorial? This is the Korean, yes, Korean, right. Now, right next to this is this. Let me tell you about this shot. So this shot here, I really like this. It's yeah, these are statues. Yeah, they're not moving. They're there. It's a great memorial, but it was not quite enough light for me. So I left this open for 30 seconds. I took my flash in my hand, and I walked over to each one of these guys and pop, 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 which over 30 seconds added just enough light to make it this. And the cool thing is, unless you're wearing neon colors, you won't be seen. So
you were walking through that?
I might have done 2 pops per one. Yeah, I'm walking through that. Well, yeah, I'm walking. I would be in frame over here. So I'm walking around going bum, 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 bum. But the average of me over 30 seconds is no me, right? So I'm just pop, pop. And I do this all the time. I've taken my car and turned it so I have headlights pointing at things. Or, if you take a flash and just go pop, 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 pop. Or flashlight, 30-second exposure, as long as the person stays really still, you can light them with a flashlight. It's called light painting. I used to do that with my son. My son, for his high school project, decided to do night photography, which is really cool that he's doing that, and I'm really excited for him, except he's like, the amount of ink I'm wasting here. Here's another one out. Every day he has to do 8x10, and they're all black, right? So it's like, call Epson, 27 more black cartridges, please. But it's cool that he's inspired by it. I love that. This shot here, same night. So this one here, I pushed ISO a little bit up, just because. But really what I wanted was, I didn't want them moving. So it's 1.3 seconds, fairly quick. And I love the way it looks like they're looking at him, he's looking down at them. Just kind of worked. And initially I was like, get out of my frame, get out of my frame. And then I realized, wait a second, I actually like it. So. And that's one of those things where sometimes I don't even notice until later. I look back and go, oh, I actually like it with the people in it. So this shot, I love the story of this shot too. This shot was done, we were camping. Like I said, I take my camera everywhere. Nothing is safe with my family. So we're camping. My nephew, I said, here's a flashlight, go in the tent. And he goes, what do I do? I go like this for 3 seconds. And that's what he's doing. He was just lighting up that tent for 3 seconds, which gave me enough to separate it from everything else in the picture. But again, I knew I had the blue light behind it. I just needed him to give me some light inside that tent. That's all it is. Guy with a flashlight. Now, if he had stood like this, you'd see a bright spot. So I had to keep him moving. Put relatives to work. It's good fun. Okay, advantage of long exposures. There's a lot of them. As I mentioned, the reflections off the water are something that your eye can't see, which makes it really, really cool when you get the photo. More motion blur, which I really like, especially in water. If it's flowing water or waterfalls or fountains, just look really, really good. Light trails from cars, still one of my favorite things to do, and I'll show you some shots here in a minute, which creates a very unique look to the images. And as I mentioned before, if you leave your exposure over long enough, you can remove people. So it looks like you're alone. So I shot this. This is a Ferris wheel in Melbourne, Australia. I purposely shot it over the river so I could get this 4-second exposure. Every exposure, the lights changed on this Ferris wheel every couple seconds. So every exposure I had was completely different. So this was a hit and miss, kind of keep going, trying 4-second, trying 2-second, trying 10-second exposures, and just playing around. Yep.
What's your definition of long exposure? Like starting what, 2 seconds, 4 seconds?
Yeah, 1 second or more.
When people start disappearing, that's what.
Well, when they start disappearing, you're probably more like 3 or 4 seconds. It depends. Here's the thing: if I'm walking this fast, a 2-second exposure, you won't know, you won't be able to tell who it is. If I go like this and then move, and this is why in the museum, when I shot in the MoMA yesterday, there's people that are just doing this, looking at artwork. Well, I could be a 10-second exposure. If they're like this, we're fine. So it really depends on what speed they're moving. And what I really like is when you have different speeds. Some people moving fast, some people moving slow. That makes it more interesting. So here, this is Niagara Falls. And if you've been to Niagara, which you probably have because it's pretty close, it's a cool place. I did not know that they lit it at night. I was very happy that they did. Pretty cool. So I didn't add any colors to that. That's just straight out of the can. It was taken, again, with the old 30D years ago. And the water just looks so much better when you give that nice flow to it versus just freezing it. This is taken in Vegas as well. And this is using the fountains of Bellagio, except instead of facing Bellagio, I was facing toward Paris and shooting that way. And so I just let the fountains kind of give me a foreground frame. And again, it's only a second, but it gives me a little bit of that movement, which makes it interesting.
Do they give you a hard time in Vegas with the traffic?
No, like I said, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. This shot here has a story to it. This is my my San Francisco shot. I actually got one. Another bar mitzvah. I had shot all day. My son was with me because he was shooting video. And we shot from 8 in the morning, or so we left the house at 7 in the morning. This is around midnight. And we're still an hour from home. And we drive by and it's this clear. And I said to my son, wow, look how clear it is. He goes, we're going to stop and shoot. I'm like, are you kidding? I am dead. I was so tired. Dad, you're going to regret it. I go, crap, he's right. So, and here's the amazing thing. We actually went up to the Marin Headlands where I shot this, and it was warm. Now, if any of you have ever been to San Francisco or the Marin Headlands, it's freezing, and the wind is howling all the time. It was surreal. I was up there like this, short sleeve, almost warm, at almost midnight. It was weird. So, and I'm very glad my son bugged me to do this, because even though we were exhausted, after I shot, I thought, you know what? Damn it, he's right again. And it was worth it. Now, this is a cross-processed photo, which is why I want to show it to you. Another reason I want to show it to you. Here's the thing. I wanted this to be blue in the sky, because it was. But if I pushed the blue on the sky, the Golden Gate Bridge became not very golden, not very orange. The color went wrong. So here's what I did. I took the same raw image and processed it twice. Once for everything else but the bridge, and then that's now one image. And then I brought it in again into Photoshop and made sure that the white balance was correct for the orange in the bridge and the orange in the water. And then I overlaid them on top of each other in Photoshop in what's called a layer mask, and then exposed the layer on the bridge and the water. So it's really almost like 2 shots combined into one to get it right. It's still one of my favorite images, and partially because my son coaxed me into going. And that's the other thing I should tell you. I'm passionate about my images, and it's not because I think I'm better than anybody else. I just really love what I do, and I love the stories that are behind them. You know, because to me, that's what makes them precious to me. And it's so rare to get this clear. And he was right. I mean, like, I had to do it. This is taken 3 weeks ago in London. I was shooting Tower Bridge, decided to turn around, saw this and shot this from a bar. Just went into the bar and set up a tripod. It was an outside bar and shot it. And it's funny because all these people were drunk next to me and we were all laughing and having a great time. So it was really kind of entertaining it too. But you'll see the light that here that, again, the eye doesn't see. I see it now because I know I've done enough times. That's going to look good. And Tower Bridge, which I showed earlier in the other session, you know, because it had the Olympic rings, I really wanted to get that shot. And then when we were in Paris, I really wanted this shot, although it's kind of funny. I stood there for about 45 minutes, much to my wife's chagrin. She's like, "Are we done yet?" And I shot it. And as we're leaving, I thought, you know, it's good, but it's just not speaking to me. So I moved farther to this side and zoomed in and shot, because you see, I liked this. I wanted to get it closer, but I would have had to move like about half a mile. There was no room. But I did this. And the reason I like it, you don't have to see the whole Eiffel Tower. We all know it's the Eiffel Tower. So that's cool. This is the starburst. Look at my f-stops on it, F18. So now I got the starburst from the lights. I got the motion because of about 15 seconds. So I got these cars, actually these cars are going that way and these are coming this way. This one made a nice little turn. So I shot probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 images here, looking for one where I had the right streaks. If there's no cars going this way, then I'll only get white. I wanted red. You know, like, so these are the kind of things I'm thinking about as I'm shooting. And like I said, this is the one where I was zoomed into this girder and I framed and focused on that girder. I knew I was tack sharp on the Eiffel Tower. And the F18, it wouldn't matter. I'm pretty much gonna be in focus anyway. But yeah, I mean, that worked. It's different. Yep.
What's the name of that location that you took the shot at?
Name of the location. Oh boy. Was it? Ask her afterwards. Yeah, it's that. I've got it written down in my iPhone because I said the same thing. Like, all these people shoot in a picture from the Eiffel Tower, and we stayed at the Marriott in the Champs-Elysees, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, you want to go here?" I was up on the top part. Yeah, and you can go to the top part or lower. And that's the thing. If you have time. So unfortunately, my wife at the time was pretty much burnt. She was tired and she's not used to international travel. She just wanted to go home. So we did leave. But normally, I would have been there another hour and I would have just kept shooting. I would have gone low, I would go high, and try everything differently. So this one here is a Parliament building. This is an interesting one. During the Olympics, they actually projected. I finally figured out how they did it. Do you see these little dots right here? Those are projectors. I couldn't figure out where the hell they're projecting from. And I looked close at the image, I zoomed in, and sure enough, those are projectors in the water. So they were projecting. The challenge with this one was I was shooting with like 6 or 7 second exposure, like this one. But when I started, I was at 30-second exposure. Well, the problem is they're changing the image every 10 seconds. So I get 3 images and it would look like crap. So when this one came on, thank God, I had the foresight to roll it to F4 to get me down to 6 seconds and fire it off and get it. And it looked really cool. But I realized when they were projecting, I was looking at the back of the camera going, eek, what's happening here? So I switched to something faster. I could have turned up the ISO as well, whatever, to get to a faster shutter speed to get the image on it. This one here was on my last trip here, I think, or 2 trips ago. So this is in your backyard, you can go shoot it. I'll tell you one thing, and this is still not complete, as you know, but when I shot this, I hate to say this, I was kind of underwhelmed during the day, at least right now. The park's not done. And I thought, you know, I was hoping for more. Obviously, it's a very important place, but at night, it took on a whole different look. And I have a lot of different shots. It's funny, I actually lost some shots. I was shooting on a prototype memory card. That was very smart of me. Before we were done with it, and I actually lost a couple images. But, you know, this speaks volumes. Actually, that speaks volumes. Don't ever shoot on prototype memory card. The stuff that we ship, you'll never see that. I guarantee you. There's a lot of work that goes, a lot of intelligence inside readers and memory cards and cameras and stuff that you guys do not want to know about. But it's important. But this shot, I do like the shot. Much prettier at night than during the day. Yes, they do let you use a tripod, surprisingly.
Do you run into, for building shots or anywhere you are, do you run into
Yeah, any issues? The question is, are there any issues when you're shooting buildings that are lit? Here's the thing that's really weird. If I shoot the Sydney Opera House during the day, I could sell the image. If I shoot the Sydney Opera House at night, technically I could not sell the image because the Sydney Opera House owns the right to their lighting. Go figure. So I had an email from someone in Germany going, you just put pictures of the Eiffel Tower on your blog. You better take them off. They're going to come after you. And I'm thinking to myself, really? Come after me? Like, you know, I mean, really? I'm not doing it. I'm not selling it. I'm just putting it on my blog. But yeah, some people are really weird about it. You know, I tried to put images on one of the stock photo. I've never done stock photo, but I thought, oh, maybe I'll try it. It was about 5 years ago. Well, they accepted my image of the Opera House, but did not accept any of my night shots of anything lit. Go figure. So, who had a question? Yeah.
When you did Bristol, how did they find out about the photos?
When I did the Bristol shot, how did they find out about it? Believe it or not, my blog was started for my family and friends. So I go travel to Australia somewhere and I put pictures up and I'd say, hey, here's what I just shot today. And then the blog became a little bit bigger, and then the blog became bigger and bigger. And now I've got like 250,000 people that are reading. So now the interesting thing about doing a blog is I love doing it because I teach all the stuff I'm telling you. I put all this stuff on the blog. So go to the blog. If you guys have Facebook, go to Jeff Cable Photography because it links to that, and I put stuff on there. But they found it. They probably Googled Bristol Bridge or whatever they did and found it. So yeah, I know it still amazes me when I see the traffic to the blog coming from all over the world. It's pretty cool. I get emails from people in Istanbul and And it actually drives me. How many people here do a blog? Do you become a prisoner to your own blog? Right? Here's the thing, like now I feel like if I don't blog for a week, I get emails. Why haven't you blogged? I'm like, I swear to God, I'm doing it, really. And it's tough. It's tough to keep up with it. But I do. Every week I try to at least blog once. So
So do you put your images on Facebook?
I don't directly put my images on Facebook very often. And the reason, I know there's a lot of controversy about just Facebook own your images if you post them on there. What I do is whenever I blog, it'll automatically link to Facebook and say, hey, I just blogged. And then people can go look at my blog. So I rarely put images to Facebook. But I dare them to try to use one.
They own you, baby.
Yeah, I know. Not the truth. Seeing the unseen. One of the cool things about very long exposures is you see stuff that you did not know was there. So reflections we've talked about, but there's a lot of other stuff that shows up. This next shot I want to show you, this is what's called a moonbow in Yosemite. So I was teaching with Canon, and one of the things that happened to be twice a year, it just so happens that if you have the right moonlight, the right flow of water, at the right time of year, you'll get a moonbow. Now, we heard this and we were teaching some of the press, how to shoot, and we started at 5 in the morning, I think, shooting. Now this is around, I don't know, midnight or 1 in the morning, so we went almost 24 hours. You talk about lack of sleep. But I was determined, like, hey, I'm in Yosemite during this time, we're getting this shot. So we showed up, but I saw nothing. So I'm walking through the Yosemite Valley with a flashlight trying to get in a good shooting position. And all these people are there with tripods. I'm like, what the hell are we shooting? The guy goes, yeah, it's there. I'm like, where? Like, I mean, seriously, didn't see a thing. And I looked at the guy's camera, I'm like, oh my God, it is there. So I set up and shot this, but I mean, it was really cool to be able to see that. Now, when people see this, they think it's shot during the day because it kind of looks like a day shot until you see the stars in the sky and a little bit of movement in the stars within those 25 seconds. But there was so much moonlight coming in that the entire mountain face is, granite is all lit by the moon. It's pretty cool, yeah.
So, for example, what would that shot have looked like at 50 seconds f2?
And you could try, honestly, at this point, I went to f4 because it's so far away that I could shoot whatever I want. And I didn't want to leave the shutter open for like 20 minutes. So this allowed me at f4, ISO 400 to give me a 25-second exposure so I could get more shots quickly. Because we were still fighting the clock with the moon and the position of the moon and everything else.
Do you cover up the eye?
I do not cover up the eyepiece, ever, never have. I know some people say it matters, but I've never seen it matter. So favorite tips. Here's my favorite tips. As I mentioned before, I swear, at least with Canon, it overcompensates for light. If you're going to do night shots, I encourage you to learn how to stop down your exposure by half a stop to a full stop and experiment with that. Because I find when I shoot at night, at regular, right at dead even, which the camera wants, I find that everything's too bright. It's like it's trying to overcompensate. So go down and try that. Every shot you've seen here, almost without fail, is stopped down at least half a stop. Shoot photos figuring that you edit them. As I mentioned, that one clock face on the Big Ben, I knew it was going to be too bright, but that's okay. I can work around that. And I'll show you a couple images here in a second where I shot it knowing I was going to tweak them. Try to avoid bright lights and street lamps, especially if they're right in front of you or your subject. Try to move so you don't have a street lamp right by you. Adjust the white balance if you feel it's necessary. So there are times when I will want things to be bluer. I can adjust it later, but sometimes I'll do it in camera just to play. Fine focus with live view, I talked about that. I zoom way in and I'll manually focus into what I'm going to make sure that it is absolutely tight. I even do that when I shoot a bar mitzvah or a wedding. I'll go into their eyelashes of the person from the back of the temple or church. I'll zoom into their eyelashes, lock the focus, and then shoot. Which is good until they do this. I was like, don't move! Yeah, I want to super glue them to the spot. Lock the mirror, as we talked about. Try zooming during the exposure, roll that zoom just to try it, because it's fun. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
When you do a bar mitzvah, you still shoot it in manual mode?
No, most bar mitzvahs I'm shooting in aperture priority. I live in aperture priority.
I mean the...
Oh, for focus?
Autofocus?
It depends. Sometimes I trust I'll use the back focus, and sometimes I'll let the camera do it, and sometimes I'll do it. Because what I find when I'm shooting an event is I like to refocus my camera every couple of frames just to make damn sure. Because I've had times where I thought I was in focus, and I got 8 shots and they're not, and then thankfully I refocused again and got it. So, yeah. Small aperture for starburst, we talked about that, f11, f16, f18, f22, something like that to get the starburst of the lights. Try, think about doing things both landscape and portrait. So you're gonna have a shot like this one, which I shot in Germany. This is in Cologne. And it's funny because Photokina, which is coming up very soon, which is the big photo show of the world, is in Cologne. I went there for the show. I was looking forward to shooting some cool stuff in Germany. Well, it turns out there isn't much in Cologne that's cool because we bombed the hell out of it, and everything was built again in like the 50s and 60s. So the only thing really cool is the Dom and the bridge. And this bridge was even rebuilt because that was a key bombing for the Americans during the war, was to take this bridge out. So the bridge is fairly new, but the Dom is beautiful. But I didn't see much else there that was that cool. So I hung out here. This one has a story too. I was sicker than a dog. I shot this 2 days before. It was black sky. I wanted the blue sky, but I was really ill. I mean, really ill. I barely made it over across the bridge and over here. And I was dying. I was shooting and half dead. Got my shots. So these I really appreciate because I don't know why I did it. Actually, I do know why I did it, because I like the shots.
That looks like the image Tamron used for their...
Yeah, it's a pretty common image because everybody's in Photokina. I mean, you have a million photographers there shooting the same thing. And this is the same shot, similar time, but now moving closer to the bridge and framing it vertically. So I have a portrait and a landscape version of it. Same place, very different look, just by moving closer to the bridge. Probably moving closer so I could die somewhere in a corner. The perfect time. So I talk about sunsets. If you're crazy enough to want to wake up at sunrise, God bless you. That ain't me. I hate mornings. This is why I love presenting here in the afternoons. It's just great. But really, be there before sunset so you can find a good shooting location, and then let the sun go away, and then you start shooting. That's what I typically do. Stay after sunset. Like I said, everybody else is going to leave, and you can just smirk like I do. Later. And then you walk into their good shooting position, and you get the best spot. Inevitable. Always happens. Don't worry about cloudy weather. If you have weather like this, who cares? Still be good. You'll still get the blue sky, unless it's really horrible. And then factor in mountains and buildings. This is a key one. If you look at your app and it says sunset is at 6:45, well, where? Right? Okay, New York City. Well, but yeah, but I'm in the heart of New York. There's a lot of buildings. So yeah, sunset is at 6:45, but I'm gonna be losing light probably at 6:25. So you have your canyons and your urban canyons. So you want to think about that too. If you're going to be somewhere in the mountains where you have mountains on both sides of you, well, the sunset isn't at 6:45, it could be at 6:20, depending on how high the mountain is in front of you. So think about that. I mentioned weather. I want to show you two shots. This is San Francisco, and this was Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. This was shot on a really muggy, or not muggy, we don't have muggy. It was a really foggy, that's what it was, foggy day. And you know, it was still a cool shot. I was happy to get it. I had to climb over a fence and put my tripod on a garbage can while dangling off a fence to get the shot. But I actually went back and reshot it at blue sky. And let me just go back and forth to the difference. Right? Totally different. Same scene, same spot, totally different shot. Now, here's the problem. If I meter for that, up there, the very bright area, this will all be black. Because your camera's gonna go, oh, this is very bright. I don't need to be open for 15 seconds. I only have to be open for 4. Ding, good. And you have a perfect exposure for that and nothing else. Okay, now, so now you say, oh, no, that's not gonna work. I better meter for that. Well, guess what?
That blows out.
This becomes a lunar eclipse, like a, you know, it's now, you know, going nuclear. So what do you do?
HDR.
What's that?
HDR.
Well, you could do HDR. Here's what I did. I shot it twice, and I combined them. So what I did was I shot it, and then I took this one, I metered for this one shot, and I metered for this on the other shot. And I layered them in Photoshop, and then I painted in the darker version of this one on where this was exposed correctly. Yeah, it's manual HDR. Yeah. But I don't like, you know, to me, and I've got HDR software, I don't know, it just looks a little weird to me, and I like control. And it, you know, honestly, it didn't take that long to do.
How are you metering?
How am I metering? I'm letting the camera meter. I'm not doing anything.
No, I mean what setting? I mean, because so.
No, just evaluative metering. I'm just kind of pointing over here going meter.
I mean, spot, high spot.
Evaluative metering.
Okay.
All my night stuff is just regular evaluative vanilla metering.
I mean, the whole 32,
Yeah.
100
Yeah.
spot.
I mean, why make more? Here's the thing about cameras today. Cameras today are computers that happen to take pictures, right? I mean, you go, I want to be aperture f4, and you go, hey camera, what should my shutter speed be if I'm at this ISO? Okay, good, thanks for taking care of that. So why fight it? You know, I mean, it works. Okay, combining exposures, as I mentioned, that's what I did in that last shot. When necessary, if you shoot RAW, it makes life a lot easier because then you can adjust that RAW image and change the exposure later or do HDR. So that shot is that combination of those two exposures put together. And this time, and I've done this with some of my night stuff if you have to. But if you have a wide degradation between what's really bright and what's not, you'll end up having to make that tweak. This one here is another example of that. This is taken again from San Francisco, in between a mitzvah where I had spare time. It's kind of funny because this is from Treasure Island, where they don't allow you to stop. So again, I broke the rules. I parked there, ran, got some shots, and then left. But I stayed near my car, so if they came, I was ready to run, hop in, and go. So this one here, this is pretty bright. That's not. If I expose for this, San Francisco, go bye-bye. If I expose for San Francisco, the bridge is way too bright. So again, I shot it twice and then brought them together into one exposure. I have 2 jobs and a family. Zoom effect, why? Why not? Some people think it's kind of kitschy. I like it, it's kind of fun. And it's different, it's cool. You can zoom in, you should try zooming out. Try different speeds of zooming. And you'll get totally different effects. If you find something cool, you want to do that zoom effect, you know, I'll try a 3-second exposure, I'll try a 10-second exposure. I'll go 1, 2, 3, roll, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and just see what happens. I'll try it the other direction, and I'll try rolling the whole time without letting it stop. You never know what you get. Pause, zoom, pause. Try different things. So here's Golden Gate Bridge. I was teaching someone photography. It was a private lesson. And I said, you know, the other thing you do is roll a zoom. I hadn't even thought about doing that. And so I did this. That's cool. And that's not me doing anything. That's just the lights of the bridge that happened to just kind of do that. I wasn't expecting that. Now this one here I did on purpose. This is, again, Times Square. You know, you guys have been there enough times, and it's like, okay, I kind of done it, been there, done
How
that.
do you not get run over?
You know what? I stand at a place where I'm typically trying not to get run over, and I just rolled the zoom, and it kind of cool. And the colors are great, right? Kind of neat. This is the one I showed earlier. This is in Vancouver, and this is rolling. This is a zoom, roll, zoom. So this is a let it sit for a second, zoom, let it sit again for another second. So 3-second exposure, of which it's 1, roll for 1, stop for 1. So those are the 3 seconds.
Could you just go back to the Times Square shot? I just wanted
I'm sorry, I charge extra for that.
That's why I have to see what the settings were.
3 seconds, f/22, fairly wide. Now it's funny because I have 18 millimeter, but I mean it's 18 to God knows what. I mean, and I'm trying zooming different levels, and you got to experiment. Just have fun.
Did you use a high f/22 because of the zoom?
Well, I went to f/22 because at ISO 100 that gave me 3 seconds. There's so much light in Times Square that if you go to f4, it's going to be like a daylight shot, and like, you know, time. So I went to f/22 to buy myself some shutter speed, or actually to get rid of shutter speed. All right, editing. Darken areas are really bright. We talked about that. Because here's the problem. The human eye will always be attracted to the brightest part of your image. But really, you don't want to make it so bright that it's ridiculous and overpowering. Increase the brightness on the darker areas. If you have an area that's too dark, you want to kind of pull it up a little bit. And I like to do as much of this in RAW as I can before I even go into Photoshop. I try to adjust this in RAW. Adjust the white balance. I find with night photos, unless I'm trying to go for a very moody, warm image, I like to pull it to the left or to the cooler side, the bluer side of RAW. And I like to stay there. And if you do have noise in your image, if you guys are using Lightroom or Photoshop, take the luminance slider and you move the luminance slider to around 25, 28, in that range. And you'll be blown away by how that digital noise go bye-bye. It's really, really good. And what you'll do is, if you want to see if you have noise, take a look at your image and zoom in to about 200% in the sky or into a darker area, okay? If you see a bunch of speckles, you have noise. Pull that luminance, don't pull too far, but pull to around 25, 26, 27, 28, something like that. And that should get rid of most of it and you should be good. Now if you pull too much, you're gonna start losing clarity. You don't wanna do that. So this shot here is that shot. So this was edited in Adobe Camera Raw. I brought this in. I use the brush where you can do the metering on the brush and you can actually lighten or darken certain areas. I use that brush and I just darken the faces of the clock because in the original RAW file, it's like screaming bright. And you don't see the numbers on the clock face at all. That's pretty much the only adjustment I made, maybe minimal stuff other than that. But that was the key for that shot, was fixing that. The other thing is, the reason I took a lot of shots, the reason I like this one is I had a bus coming through. You see the streaking in the lines. Now that added, so what I did was I shot probably 15 shots like this. This one here, I had 2 things happening. I had a boat and a bus. If you do the same shot without the boat and the bus, it's okay. You got Parliament building and all this, but this is black, and it just gets lost in the middle. But because I had the bus going through, it kind of helps add one more dimension. And again, because it's 8-second exposure, it let the bus go all the way through. Now, did I plan that? Yeah, I'm on the radio with the bus driver. I get slower, slower, slower. No. But I wait and just kind of see what I get. And so I try different things, and I will adjust aperture, looking at the shutter speed. I'll wait for the boat to come by. I'll wait for the boat to leave. And I'll try different things to see. Because sometimes, like this one here, I'm still torn on. I'm not sure I really like the boat there. I like the bus. Not sold on the boat, but you get what you get, right? So. Yeah, it's different. But you know, it's fun, and the great thing is you just try different things and you look at them afterwards and you determine what you want. Now, could I get rid of the boat? Yeah, because I had the shot right before it where the boat's not there. I could either, I could take that and drop it in. Too much work. It did it. Now, the last thing is, that's how you get a hold of me. jcable@jeffcable.com. So my website's jeffcable.com. As I mentioned, Facebook, which is probably the best way to keep track of everything I'm doing. So if you're on Facebook, just go to Jeff Cable Photography. And then I blog, like I said, I try to blog every week. So the stuff I just shot at the MoMA yesterday will be up there hopefully in the next couple days. But when I blog, I try to put, like I actually have one section, you can search my blog. You can go night photography and look it up and actually categorize them. And I try to put lessons and tips and tricks on almost everything I'm shooting on there. So if I'm shooting an event, I'll talk about, here's what I did. Not always, but I try to teach and help, because I feel like so lucky just to be able to do what I do. To be able to do the Olympics is an amazing experience, and to be able to travel around the world and do the things. It is a passion, but I don't take it for granted. I know that a lot of people don't get the chance to do that, and a lot of people don't get a chance to learn all this stuff. And I'm lucky, because of Lexar, we sponsor some of the top photographers in the world. So they're brutal to me. Like, I remember telling Moose Peterson 5 years ago, look at this shot, and he's like, that's crap. I'm like, what? And but my friends would all be like, oh, that's amazing. You don't need friends like that. Because you put something on Facebook. A friend of mine put a photo on Facebook. Yeah, hopefully he'll never watch this video. And his horizon was off like this. It was horrible, and it was like, I'm cringing, right? And everybody's commenting, that is an awesome shot. It should be in the calendar. And I'm like, seriously, I'm like, and my wife's like, don't write back, don't run. My son, my brother, hey, check out my vacation pictures. And my wife goes, don't critique them, just look at them. And I try to teach him too. But sometimes we have to bite our tongue. But it's good to have someone who's honest with you. Someone who will say, you know what, that's not good because of this. And so because we sponsor some of these great photographers and they're hard on me, it made me a better photographer because I wanted to improve and get to that point. So, I feel like because they taught me, it's our job to keep teaching and pass it on. So that's kind of why I like to do this. Clearly it's not for the money. It's tough to make money in this business, I will tell you that. But it's a hell of a lot of fun, and that's hopefully what everybody's doing it for. So if you guys have questions, I'll be more than happy to stay and answer them. I appreciate you guys all coming.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.